I think what really still excites me about taking photographs is that I might get a great one. I might make an iconic picture if I'm lucky. I try and make iconic images. They're hard to make, but that's my goal, is to make images that stand on their own. That's what I try and do. Not to tell a particular story. I think film tells a story. You know, still pictures should be single, very powerful images, and I've always felt that way.
Hello. In my early days, Mary Ellen Mark was probably my strongest influence. I was eager to learn how she was able to produce powerful, beautifully composed images that communicate a real sense of connection. And also how she repeatedly got this right. At that time, photojournalism for me seemed like a means of escaping my restrictive upbringing in the suburbs of Cape Town. I found this booklet in a second-hand bookshop, and it was this picture that really caught my attention. It was the first Mary Ellen Mark picture that had a visceral effect on me. I imagined what it would have been like to be in that space, working in this foreign environment, feeling the humid Indian heat and taking pictures. It's a gentle, almost sad portrait of this spaced out hippie, but there's also something exotic about it. The mysterious figure and the dark blue wall in the background. Mark didn't have the happiest home life or childhood, so she developed a heightened sense of justice and a feeling of passion for people who had fallen through the cracks. Mark was one of the photojournalist superstars of the 80s. There were so many great magazines, Look, Life, Rolling Stone, The New Yorker, and there were plenty of opportunities for photographers. Their editors wanted beautifully crafted images that informed readers about the world. Mark consistently delivered. Eugene Richards is perhaps the only other gritty photojournalist who I can think of who performed at this level over many years. Mark had a gift for immediately making a connection with people, and she was able to communicate a level of deep humanity. Now, a lot of photographers are able to feel empathy for the people that they're photographing, but they can't simultaneously distance themselves from that connection, allowing themselves to remain objective. Mark was able to hold both of these states simultaneously. She was able to maintain the trust and closeness of the connection while tracking the action and composition, as well as anticipating the right moment to take the picture. As a photographer, one has to slow time down and maintain an inner stillness so that all of the variables remain in equilibrium until the picture arrives. She had a few other really valuable skills. She had a strong work ethic, a restless-ness to be out in the world photographing, and the ability to integrate the multiple elements within a scene, creating an eloquent and impactful frame.
My photographs are emotional, and I want them to be emotional. I want them to touch people and make them feel. It's hard to say what I'm looking for. I'm looking for humor, I'm looking for irony, I'm looking for intensity. I'm looking for what makes a good photograph. Photography was always an intense process for me. I never felt it was easy. To do anything well, it's difficult. To be okay at something is easy. But if you really want to be exceptional at something, it's hard. I still think of the things, sometimes I felt too meek to shoot. And I think you can't feel too meek. You have to document. It's a great lesson in how far you can go, documentary photography, especially when you're in intimate situations.
She said in an interview that taking photographs is like playing an instrument. The more you play, the better you get. At age 9, she started photographing with a box brownie and became increasingly absorbed by photography's ability to communicate ideas and emotions. After graduating with a master's in photojournalism, she received a Fulbright scholarship to photograph in Turkey for a year. During that time, she also traveled and photographed in a number of other nearby countries. This work was published in her first photo book called Passport. The title was probably significant to her for a number of reasons. On the strength of this work, she started getting magazine assignments, and she also worked as a special stills photographer on films. In just a few years, she morphed from being head cheerleader at her suburban Pennsylvania school to being an international photojournalist. During her career, she worked on more than 100 movie sets. This shot of director Federico Fellini is purely about gesture. Apart from the curve of his body and the megaphone, there's very little going on within the frame. But in its simplicity, she manages to capture the energy of the moment. While working on films like Gandhi and Apocalypse Now, she managed to elevate her photographs so that they have the authenticity of photojournalism rather than being mere film still records. Her way of seeing also allowed her to merge portraiture with photojournalism. It becomes difficult to tell where one ends and the other begins. This made her work even more suitable for magazines. When it came to editing and designing the pages for one of her picture stories, it was very easy because there was a strong sense of the pictures belonging together. Mark used the connections that she made during the filming of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest to develop an essay on mental hospitals that she had been considering for some time. During filming, the director of the hospital gave Mark a tour of the women's maximum security Ward 81. As the shoot wrapped up, she corresponded with the director of the facility for nearly a year before finally getting access to photograph. She spent 36 days living on Ward 81, producing photographs that are both intimate and troubling. Her book, Ward 81, was one of the first glimpses into the lives of institutionalized mentally ill patients. Mark only shot analog and preferred black and white. Her go-to stock was Kodak Tri-X. She didn't shy away from difficult subjects. She saw children as being exploited as the canaries in the coal mine of society. In this 1990 image, Amanda and her cousin Amy are in a kiddie pool. The picture was taken in North Carolina at a school for problem children. This is such a simple shot, 2 kids and a nice circle shape created by the pool. But she manages to inject so much emotion and information into the frame. Amanda on the right projects trouble. Her cocky stance shows that she's very unlikely to back down. She's 9 going on 19. She's smoking a cigarette, wearing earrings and makeup, and has long fingernails. The body language and expression of the girl on the left, Amy, communicates the opposite. She's probably the same age, but just not a contender.
I mean, it's like saying, what's photogenic? I don't know what's photogenic. It has to hit something inside you that you say, I get it, I understand it. That is so difficult to look at, or that is so beautiful, or it has to touch you emotionally.
Unlike some documentary photographers who insist they get to know their subjects before picking up their camera, Mark would always start shooting right away. She believed that if you don't, you're misrepresenting your role in the situation. Life magazine sent Mark to Seattle, which had been named America's most livable city, in order to document runaway teenagers. The story got a lot of attention, and her book, StreetWise, is probably her most recognized body of work. especially her long-term focus on Erin Blackwell, or Tiny. Mark returned to Seattle over many years taking portraits of Tiny, as she moved through different life stages from being a 13-year-old street hustler to becoming a middle-aged mom with 10 kids. Looking at the pictures that illustrate Tiny's story, we are able from a distance to explore the cycles of poverty, addiction, and homelessness. A strong relationship developed between these two, but Mark was honest about what for her drove the collaboration.
It's not a sense of responsibility. I wish I could say that and then I'd be like saintly or something like that. It's because it's interesting. It's fascinating. So in a way it's selfish because it's fascinating.
She loved India and the circus, and she returned to produce photographs of this dying institution. She spent 6 months documenting 18 different circuses, and her images are a mix of formal and environmental portraiture. Some she shot in her usual 35mm format, but many of the portraits are framed square. Her empathy for both humans and animals comes through in this work.
I guess it's something that I see in animals and that interests me and that I look for in animals, that sort of anthropomorphic quality. With these dogs, they were a bit like humans, but they tried so hard. They kind of broke my heart because it was so important to them to be perfect.
Mark said that this man, Ram Prakash Singh, was an elephant trainer as well as a ringmaster. He had a huge ego and oversaw his circus with an iron fist. He died a few months after this photograph was taken, after he ate a poisoned chapati. During this time when everyone has a camera and the buzz term is citizen journalism, one might think that photojournalism is no longer relevant. But when you spend time with the pictures that Mark produced, you can recognize that there's a huge difference between someone who's taking a decent picture and a talented photographer who goes about building a powerful photo essay. By 2013, Mark had stopped getting calls for assignments. Magazine work had become overly stylized, and art directors were more interested in publishing pictures of celebrities or commissioning photographers who would illustrate a theme.
More and more now, I mean, what's happened with magazines is that they don't want to publish the pictures of the unfamous. They don't. People that are famous, they're very protective of who they are. And I mean, I understand why, because they have an image that they have to control.
Even though she had lived through the golden age of magazines, she struggled to come to terms with the harsh realities of this new order. After her death in 2015, her husband began poring over the 2 million contact prints and chrome sheets that she had accumulated during her 5-decade career. The result is this book. I chose some of my favorite images for this video, but I could have quite easily replaced them with an equally strong alternative selection. She was like the Beatles. She hit the note perfectly over and over again. I'll run some images from one of her other interests, which is twins. I hope that you appreciate her work as much as I do, and I'll see you next time.
I have no regrets. Given the opportunity to do something differently, to start again, I would still go in that direction. I love photographs about humans, or animals. I love animals too, but or humans and animals. But I think that the art world, they're always thinking in terms of decoration, and those kind of strong images aren't as decorative. And it's too bad, because my favorite photographs, and I think historically the pictures that I love, are the photographs that are about reality. I personally feel that it's worth taking the pictures. It's worth it.